In this video, we're going to take a look at bias in sampling and in questions. Bias is a real bugger because if we have bias in either our sample or in our questions, then our data just isn't going to be much good. So it's really important that we pay close attention to how we choose our sample and how we write our questions as we're going to be doing some data collection to try and make some determinations about a population or a situation. All right, so first thing, when we're talking about sampling, it's really important that if we want to represent a population, every single member of that population has to have an equal chance of being chosen. The randomness is a big deal, okay? It can't just be from one little group. We can't ask all the uh, second grade students about an entire school. Okay, that wouldn't make a lot of sense because there's older and younger students as well who might have some different types of concerns. If we want to just talk about second grade students, okay, that's fine, but we can't generalize to a larger population if we only choose second grade students. Over or underrepresenting the groups, another way that this can happen is in some of those traditional kind of demographic categories, male, female, um, age groups, different races or religious groups or whatever. We have to make sure that all of those have an appropriate representation in our sample. And if we have those issues, then our data are invalid for the population. And it is for the population, if we're looking to do for a bigger population, it can certainly be valid for the sample because you collected it from a particular sample, but we can't then extend that out to a larger group of people. It would be like you want to know about something in your whole state, uh, but you only ask people in a certain town. Well, it might be true in that town, but we can't necessarily generalize to the whole entire state. Okay? So for sampling, we want randomness. We got to make sure that it represents the population that we're trying to work on. When we're writing questions for a survey, especially, we want to be aware of how the way that we write a question might sort of swing the respondent in a particular direction to gain a certain response. So we have to be very careful and think through. We don't want to encourage a certain response in our question, like saying, do you agree that, and just have a very strong opinion right in the question, because that's going to likely sway the person, the respondent, to answer that question. Also, not having enough information to respond. Maybe the question is too general. Uh, do you like the weather today? I mean, that's kind of a really general question, and the weather can change a lot over the course of a day. It has to be specific. A question that can be too sensitive to be truthful. Maybe the person responding might be embarrassed about a question, what their response would be. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll is kind of a place where we have to be careful there, because people are often very sensitive and will maybe give a response that is expected or that they think is expected rather than what the truthful response might be. And another way that we can make questions biased is if they cover more than one issue. For example, if you say, do you think that football and baseball should have longer seasons? Well, maybe you think football should, but not baseball. But if you look at that question, you might say yes, And maybe it's just for one of them, or you might say no, and maybe it's just for one of them. So we have to be very careful in terms of not mixing together issues and being very specific as we write our questions. All right, so let's look at some examples and some situations and talk through how we might make them better so that we don't have bias. All right, so this first one, it says a school asks people to participate in an online poll about when to begin the school year. Well, there's a couple issues here. First of all, it's a self-selected survey. Just throwing a survey out there in an online poll, um, self-selected tends to get people that have a strong opinion either for or against. Another issue with an online poll is that could people respond multiple times? And are we okay with that? If one person can respond over and over, they could push the vote one direction or the other. And so that's another thing we want to be aware of. And I wouldn't honestly trust an online poll for much of any thing in terms of making decisions because there's just too many ways that it's either going to get you your extremes or someone might sort of rig it if they put in the time. This next one, it says a researcher is trying to determine the most popular sport in a community. They ask the high school football team. Well, what is the population that we're working with? The community. Does the football team, the high school football team, represent the community? Ugh, probably not. That's not a very good representation of the community. So maybe they ask a few of them, but goodness sakes, if you're going to represent the community, you better have some people other than just the high school football team. Okay? So it misrepresents the population. Your dentist asks whether you brush your teeth and floss every day. Okay, a couple things. Well, we've all gone to the dentist, I hope, and you get that question, have you been flossing? I'm thankful that my dentist doesn't even really ask that question. They ask, how are things going? How are your teeth feeling? And so on. They don't uh, make me want to lie to them. And I wasn't a liar about it, but they can tell if you brush your teeth and floss every day or not. You're not fooling anyone. So it's perhaps too sensitive because your dentist is asking you about how you care for your teeth. And we know that the dentist wants us to take care of our teeth, right? And another issue with this question is that it asks about two different things: brushing your teeth and floss every day. Well, what if you brush your teeth every day but you don't floss every day? The answer yes or no. You might be doing part of it. What if you don't do either one? Well, then that's okay. But if it's just one or the other, maybe you floss every other day. And so our question just has too much going on there. And maybe a way around this would be to have an anonymous poll or something or just answer that question before answer in like the pre-screening when you go to your appointment to put that information in there. So it's kind of you're not talking to your dentist, but again, they know what's up. All right, a survey question. Do you agree that Don P. Politician is doing a horrible job? Okay, so do you agree should not be the part of any survey question? Okay, because that's pushing people in a certain way. And then we've got this word right here, horrible. You might think that they're not doing the best job, but maybe not horrible. We're trying to lead the respondent when we say, "Do you agree?" and then use really strong adjectives like horrible. This last one, a survey question: do the sidewalks in our city need fixing? Which ones? Uh, the sidewalks probably are all over the community. And so it's a really general question. There's not enough information there. Maybe the sidewalks in front of my house are good, but the ones on the other side of town, not so good. And so maybe I'm not aware of the sidewalks that do need fixing. And so to fix this one, we would want to do something like uh, do the sidewalks on such and such a street need fixing? Do the sidewalks in your neighborhood need fixing? Something along those lines, because we just have to be more specific. There's not enough information there. So, bias in sampling and questions. This is probably one of the most important things, and I find myself really paying close attention to surveys and things that I respond to. Did they make some of these mistakes? And you'd be amazed how often it happens. And you might find yourself putting together a survey, and you want to make sure that your results are going to be good, that they're not skewed in some way or biased in some way because of how you worded your question or how you chose your sample. It's a big deal, happens a lot, very real world stuff. This is some real world math, no doubt about it. You'd be a great consumer of data and survey results and taking surveys. This is awesome. Keep working hard on your math. You got this, and you will be a better citizen if you understand this.